Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.
What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. The Ottawa protests, they created an ecosystem of new activists and new journalists. Well, at least new as far as the ether was concerned in Canada. And one of those people is my guest today. I have two guests today. I didn't put the other guest in the promo. It was the last minute addition. But I want to get down to it because the two guests that I have today have a kind of different angle on what the convoy protests in Ottawa were all about. Was it about freedom and liberty, or was it about a political operation where people were people who had gathered in Ottawa for liberty and freedom as sort of like pawns in a political game? And we are going to see if we can sort of answer those questions today. My guests are Andy Lee and whistleblower and self-professed political fixer David Wallace. Welcome to the show, guys. How you doing?
Good. It's good to be here. Good. Thanks for having us.
Good to see you.
Andy, I'm going to start with you. You've been on the show before, and we talked a little bit about how you were basically embedded inside the convoy. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I mean, I kept under the radar for the most part. I joined it in Calgary, and I was concerned about some things, and I was also really enchanted by some things. So I decided to follow them all the way to Ottawa and go all the way to the crackdown.
And you covered the protest there. Was it your footage? I think I get this mixed up sometimes, but was it your footage of the horse stepping on that protester? Was that your footage, or were you just really close to that when it happened?
No, I was there. I've actually got different footage from a different angle. I was talking to CTV right before that happened, and I actually got pepper sprayed. So there's a video out there of me getting pepper sprayed, which is a lot of fun. It's a good
Hot.
It's a good memory of the whole experience and what can happen, right, when you sort of do these sorts of things. So so I didn't have that really close-up footage. No, I was further back in the crowd.
Okay, but you walked away from the Ottawa protests, and it seemed like you were pretty staunchly in the camp of Trudeau is behaving like sort of dictator light. The people that were assembled there were largely peaceful. And to be perfectly honest with you, I sort of feel the same way. Like, I did not see that as a violent protest. I thought it was disruptive in a way that we had never seen before with the truck horns. There was a part of me that thought it was a little hypocritical, because I'm fairly certain a large swath of the people that were there were really gung-ho to end the blockade protests that First Nations protesters were involved with not too far before that. But at the end of the day, you walked away sort of, you had like a new audience, and you had like a new way of sort of looking at what our democracy is all about. Am I off on that, or is that roughly where your mind was at?
Yeah, no, I mean, I started following them because I was worried early on about some of the rhetoric I saw coming out from our government about MSM. They seemed determined to villainize these people. And so when I actually went and I thought, I'm going to meet them in person and see what they're all about. And when I met them, I actually, I felt like they were very vulnerable to, being villainized and being slandered. And that was what was already happening. And this was long before we were in Ottawa, right? These were when the initial convoys were just meeting up at meeting places. So I sort of felt obligated to go with them and try to be honest. And there was, I thought it was largely one of the most successful protests that the world has ever seen, probably in its uniqueness, its scale, in the way that people conducted themselves. Was there bad behavior? Was there rowdy behavior? Sure, there was that too, right? But I thought that by and large, for what it was, an incredible phenomenon, and it was tremendously successful, and it didn't necessarily deserve to be painted in the light that it was painted in. And so I sort of made it my mission to go along with them and try to debunk stories. And I did debunk a lot of stories, right? I mean, I debunked the Ottawa arson horse. That was, I did that with John Kay, and Marco Mendocino is still using that during the Emergencies Act inquiry, right? He's still following.
Yeah, the funny thing is that was like an attempt by actual like documented communists, not to belabor that point, but it was actually like an attempt at this like microcosmic version of a false flag operation. Like they wanted to set the building on fire and blame it on the convoy protesters. And yeah, I was with you on that. I know Jonathan Kay, and I saw his tweets on that, and actually it was his tweets that made me familiar with first of all, I take my lead sometimes from journalists like John Kay when it comes to let's wait for the evidence and then see what's going on. It was too reflexive, I thought, that people were just like, oh, a fire got started in a building in Ottawa, protesters. Like, it just seemed a little bit too convenient. But yeah, that was good work.
It was really weird. Like the police, because I talked to Jim Ellis, and I was like, I was the first one, of course, my account got censored, right? Shortly thereafter. But I was like, Jim, how did you just happen upon this story in Twitter, right? Like nobody reported this to the police, or what's going on here, right? So the whole thing was bizarre. But yeah, I mean, I think it's indicative of probably a bigger problem, is that, and anybody can do it, and anybody can fall victim to it, are false reporting and our tendency to want to jump onto stories if they massage our confirmation bias, right? We all like that.
Yeah. I saw that on both sides though. I saw a lot of like there were and David, I'm going to pivot to you now, but there were conservatives that were like sitting MPs that were posting stories about a supply chain crisis. Yes. It was a false story. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there has been concerns about the supply chain, but that had been going on for a year already before the protests started. And they just decided to like take stock photos of grocery stores in the UK. And they were hilarious photos. There's one photo of a woman. She's sitting there like this, but she's looking at empty shelves as if it's taking her forever to realize that the shelves are empty. And so it wasn't even good stock footage. But David, I want to pivot to you because you have a totally different take on what started the convoy protests and how it fomented. And I think the way that you described it on my show, or actually I think it was Dean's show, but on the phone with me, is that there was an organic movement that was really small. And then what you said is that the political operatives then built a superstructure around it. Can you go into detail about that?
Sure. I believe the convoy is genuine in every way, but I also believe it's false in every way. The genuine movement, the people, the genesis that got it started, are probably to this day not fully aware of what strings were pulled. The movement starts out, it gets a little bit of steam on social media. These people now have it down to a science. We're talking algorithms. They know that a movement, when it's picking up steam, this is something that can be steered. It's steered through social media. It's steered through what stories get printed in the paper. It's steered through what shows talk about on the radio or MSN. And the media in this country is predominantly controlled by conservative interests. And I'm not talking about the Conservative Party. I'm talking about neo-conservative interests and industry, such as a corporation that owns a Star newspaper, Post Media. We are talking about major media voices. These are the voices that your mother and father hear. This is what they believe because these are the voices they hear on their television at night just before they turn it off to go to bed. And that opinion, once it gets seated, it's not coming out of there. It becomes a belief. So an organic movement such as this convoy is a perfect opportunity to leech onto and throw your resources behind. The people who organized it were probably completely unaware they were being steered. And these people, despite their intentions, maybe an overall plan at the beginning of the convoy, probably found themselves compromising a great deal along the way because the group consensus was pushing them in one direction. And that group consensus was being manufactured by operatives. And I don't dispute that the protesters were peaceful. They were peaceful almost entirely. And I know the incidences of violence that were perpetrated happened because there were other bad actors, but they didn't happen to be from the protest. They were bad actors who were affiliated with the protest, but were working for the office of the PMO and the local police and intelligence agencies. And when there were claims of perhaps gunshots, there were real bullets, but those bullets probably weren't fired by anybody in the convoy.
Would you say then, David, that there were bad actors on both sides, and so the convoy, the political operatives that you say were at least responsible for steering unbeknownst protesters, that to combat that, the authorities and what you just said, the PMO, I'd like you to sort of explain that a little bit more, but that they fought those bad actors with their own bad actors, like agent provocateurs, that type of thing?
Not really. How do you make somebody look like they're cowardly? How do you make somebody look like a hothead? How do you make somebody look like they're seizing power and wielding it like a dictator? How do you make somebody look indecisive? Well, if he orders certain things, or the government asks certain authorities to move in such a way, and those authorities have been infiltrated and they move in an entirely different way and acts of violence occur, what do? What I'm saying is this movement is the same movement that is behind these hateful speeches, rhetorics. Personally, I'm waiting for the fire at the Reichstag after I hear Mr. Poilievre speak. These are not conservatives. I have no beef with conservatives. I'm not a conservative, and I'm not a liberal. I'm a Canadian. And what I'm saying is conservatives are being painted with a brush. Look at some of these convoy organizers. They're being left to hang. And they're patsies. They're patsies. The support rolled in, but now they're rolling out through the news cycle. And because they're really not that wise, they don't know that they were used. They believe passionately in what they did. And again, I'm not saying I disagree with them. They believe passionately in what they did. They believe they did the right thing for Canada. And they're innocent in that sense. They don't know they were played. People
Andy,
who think they can't be played are the easiest people to play. Mm-hmm. If you think you might be played, then you're on guard. All right. So what I'm saying is these people were pawns, and the government of this country is being used as a pawn right now. This isn't a political party that wants to come into power. This is a fascist dictatorship that wants to come into power.
Those are strong words, Andy. As someone who's referred to Trudeau as a dictator, I believe once or twice in the past, how do you feel about that?
I'm trying to just clarify. So are you indicating that you feel like the conservatives were using them as pawns?
No, I think the conservative movement are being used as pawns. Real conservatives are being washed along in a tide of fascism. That's what's happening. And we're proving it. We're proving it through the massive PPE fraud that is being ferreted out right now by hook or by crook by some really talented journalists. This was a crime that was perpetrated because of religious fanaticism and greed.
But who is behind that? Just to clarify, who do you think is behind that religious fanaticism? Exactly, like what groups? Just so I'm clarified. I'll agree that they're pawns. I think that they were pawns. They were pawns for the media. They were pawns even for the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party, I have some disagreement with how the Conservative Party treated these people. And of course, I've got issues with how the Liberal Party treated them. So I'll agree that they were manipulated and they were pawns. And that's precisely why I joined onto them, because I thought, these people are going to be played, they're going to be used, their words are going to be twisted, they're going to be villainized, they need protection. and I might be able to provide them some protection. I couldn't protect them from everything, but I protected them from a lot.
But the people that were using them, were not the people that were insulting them. The people that were using them were the people that were steering them.
Absolutely. Those are the people, and that's not a political party. That's a movement. That's a brotherhood.
Are we talking about some of these, these freedom movements that are popping up, and there's a lot of them popping up, and a lot of them do have, religious undercurrents. And, we know that I'm not against religion in any way, but I'm always suspicious when somebody attaches religion to a political cause, because I feel like religious people, again, if you're a real believer, then you'll tend to believe what people tell you. If they tell you that their political cause is correct, and that this is the word of God, then, people tend to manipulate that power and that belief, right? So I also have a problem with that. So is that the sort of thing that we're talking about here, just to clarify?
No, not really. What I'm talking about is the neocon movement. We're talking about a corporation for all intents and purposes. Gerald Chapor acts as the bagman on this side of the border. Religious extremist cults like the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and you can name dozens and dozens more that are Seventh-day Adventist Church. They're all affiliated. I'm not criticizing the people who believe. I'm not criticizing the rank and file. I'm talking about these people who are intimately involved in both politics and the financing of the politics, the fundraising, and drawing these communities together to be used as money laundering operations. And those money launderers then turn around and put their cash back into politicians such as Mr. Poilievre, who will rubber stamp their initiatives, such as let's roll back the clock 100 years. Let's take away a woman's right to decide what she's going to do with her own body. Let's take away telling Billy that it's no longer okay. We can't educate other people or other children that it's okay to accept a kid who might be gay or might have some other issue he has to do. No, now we have to bury it in a closet so that kid can go shoot up a school. And speaking about shooting up a school, these same people are the ones who are behind the dark cash that flow into our country so we can help finance these manufacturers so their weapons can be bought so they can go and shoot up kids. Those are the people I'm talking about.
Okay. So I just in case I can sort of set the table here a little bit. I don't know if you've been following some of the stories that we've been breaking on Blackballed and on the Dean Blundell show, Andy, but a lot of it has. Sorry?
Oh, I haven't followed a lot of it.
Okay, but a lot of the characters that seem to have been involved with at least the fanning of the flames of this protest so that it would mobilize and head to Ottawa and stay there for 1,000 years or however long you guys were there for, is connected to people who are intimately involved with a church known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church,
okay.
Which is, well, you'll actually, you know what, David, I won't do it justice like you would. Can you give an elevator pitch on the PBCC and its role in politics and the main players like Chapor and stuff like that and how they're affiliated with the Conservative Party? Are you able to do that?
Sure. This is a church that has, I believe, 50,000 members worldwide. They're extremely secretive. Think Scientology. They come with their own fearless leader. They are everywhere in small pockets. They're all conservative. They don't associate with the world, meaning they don't associate with anybody unless they're in the faith. But they have their few select leaders who interact with these politicians. They're largely responsible for the rise of Stephen Harper to power. They basically hired me through a gentleman named Gerald Chapor, who is the lawyer for Mr. Harper. He was the lawyer for the Conservative Party. He's a big dude. They hired me to hunt down a felon named Richard Marsh. Long story short, turns out he wasn't a felon. He was a whistleblower. They wanted me to kidnap him. And I wasn't cool with that. So we kept him safe. And Richard is safe today because we didn't turn him over to these whack jobs. And I got curious, so I started sniffing. And I found out that these are the same gentlemen who were behind the convoy, not its start, but its hijacking, so to speak.
Yeah. So, and a lot of these claims, I know if you're hearing them for the first time, Andy, I get that you might feel a little bewildered or even doubtful, but the connections between this lawyer, Gerald Shapur, and this group are not just like political, they're corporate. He seems to be the conduit or the connecting tissue between government money for PPE and the distribution of the PPE through organizations that are owned either wholly or in part by this group. Is that accurate, David?
That is correct.
And they don't even believe in COVID, which is hilarious, but they're the ones supplying the PPE stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is that, are you open, Andy, to the idea that the movement that you were embedded in was really just a case of people being kind of manipulated and used, like almost the entire movement itself? Like, that doesn't mean that people didn't have passions that they believed in. It's not really about that. It's about being used. It's about using people for their passions. Do you find it a little, sorry, I'm cutting myself off here, but do you find it a little weird that politics in this country was really, we were all soured by politics in this country, and the victor after the dust settles from the convoy is the Conservative Party of Canada somehow? Like, doesn't that concern you a little bit? Like, at least Max Bernier was like consistent since he was basically robbed of the leadership of the Conservative Party a bunch of years ago. He's been consistent. Pierre Poilievre used to thumb his nose at the people he's courting now. And I'm just wondering what you think that is about, and what your thoughts are on that.
Like I said, I mean, I had problems with everybody who attached themselves to this movement, and I was, suspicious of all of them. And people were probably suspicious of me and questioned if I benefited financially, and I didn't. I do this for free. I've never made any money off of this and things like that. So, did I have a problem with some people attaching themselves to it and getting on board later? Yes, but at the same time, I think, that's the same state that a lot of Canadians are in. Is, I think we've all got our red pill moments, and some of our red pill moments come earlier than others. And I think that the Conservatives realized that, to start winning, they had to be Conservatives again, right? After Aaron O'Toole, he was far too liberal. He wasn't right-sided enough. He wasn't getting, the right-sided voters, and he was losing them and bleeding them to the PPCs, and even bringing them to me. I mean, I ran, right? I ran, for the Maverick Party for Jay Hill, Stephen Harper's, former House leader. So, I think that they had a dawning moment where they realized that, and I think that they also realized very much that if they, got on board with this movement, and if they did use it in a sense to villainize Justin Trudeau, it's a very powerful message, and it's a message that's being reverberated throughout the world now. We've got countries all over the world now saying, yeah, Justin Trudeau is an evil dictator, right? So, I mean, of course they looked at
but
this.
That's not a positive thing.
And said, no, I mean, it's never a positive thing, because unfortunately we had people who had very real world repercussions that will stay with them for the rest of their lives, right? I mean, Tamara is always, she's going to carry that with her. But I think that she's smart, she's not stupid. She knew a little bit what was going on. She knew that she was going to take the fall for this. Pat King, I said from the beginning, from the get-go, Pat King should be removed. He shouldn't be speaking for this movement. I question his mental stability even with some of the stuff that he puts out. And I mean, some people said, you should be the speaker for this movement, the voice. And I was like, there's no way when they've got some of those people in there that, are putting out these wild messages. There's no way that I can be responsible for that and have my name tied to that. As much as I want to support you guys and love you guys, and I believe that Tamara did this very altruistically, I don't think there was any. I mean, I talked to Tamara at the beginning of this, it was chaotic. Like, it was not like, hey, let's raise $10 million, right, and fund a political movement. That's not what it was like at all. It was like, hectic phone calls, trying just to get CB radio chats together, trying to get communication in between the convoys. Like, it was a mess, right? Everybody thinks it was this slick, well-oiled movement that was so well planned. It wasn't.
I don't think I haven't met anyone that thinks that.
Chaotic grass. No, that's what people were accused of, though, right? Like, that was put out there that, there was some ulterior motives. Like, I can remember Gerald Butts at the beginning retweeting an article, and the article said, that this was the ulterior motive was for the Maverick Party. So that's the party that Tamara was associated with, the federal party that I ran with, that it was just to fund the Maverick Party so that Alberta could separate from Canada. I was like, that's bonkers. Like, that had nothing to do with anything, right? But a lot of people were suggesting that, there were ulterior motives. And I do agree that, unfortunately, and I don't think this is unique to this. It's any movement. You look at Black Lives Matter, you look at the LGBTQ movement. Any movement out there, when it gets powerful enough, is going to be co-opted, and groups that have their own political agenda are going to try to own it and further their own agenda and fund it.
Can I interject for a second and tell you why I think that happens? Because I think you're right about what you just said. It's because every movement goes through a phase where they're infallible. They cannot be criticized. With Black Lives Matter, you couldn't criticize them. The media wouldn't let you criticize them. They were raising $100 million in 2020. And then when the dust settled, you found out that a bunch of them at the top were stealing that money and buying real estate. And so those of us that were criticizing them at the time, who were being called racist, are now sitting there. And I didn't do this because honestly, I can't even be bothered anymore to try to like point out that other people were wrong about that kind of shit. But it's like, as soon as a movement reaches that subliminally like infallible status, I'm out. I check out. The convoy became this thing, as far as I could tell. And again, I just want to reiterate again that I agree with both of you. It was largely peaceful in the sense that it was fairly nonviolent. I think that if Black Lives Matter took over Parliament Hill, it would have been kind of a different outcome with the cops anyways. But whatever. This was what it was. But there was a point there where it was like, if you supported the convoy, you couldn't, there was no criticism that they would ever accept. There was literally nothing that they would accept as viable criticism. And when I saw that happening, it reminded me of Black Lives Matter. It reminded me of like certain environmental groups that protest. It reminded me of the Israeli-Palestinian protests that happened at the same time in Toronto sometime. And I was just like, well, wait a second. Can these people throw the obvious bad elements in their convoy under the bus? Can they admit that maybe there's people there with unsettling views? Can they maybe admit that there's a strain of this movement that is like fundamentalist, scary Jesus freaks? No, they couldn't. And I think the polarization in this country made it like a perfect ecosystem for something like that to happen. I want to go back to what you said about Trudeau and being known as like a dictator worldwide. He invoked the Emergencies Act for what, 6 days? Something like that? I mean, are we going to protest about those 6 days in 6 years? Or are we going to be like, let's get on with it? I'm going to address that to Andy and then we'll go to you, David.
Well, I mean, I don't think that we're protesting because he did that, right? I think we're protesting because we still have our fellow citizens who don't have mobility rights, the same mobility rights. Even though, I mean, you know what? I got 2 shots. I waited almost 6 months in between my shots. I didn't do anything according to guidelines. I'm questioning my booster if they're going to mandate it for me. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, my vaccine has waned. I might have a certain degree of long-term protection. That's what the studies show. But let's face it, as far as like transmission and reception right now, and there's very limited study on whether I'm actually should be considered vaccinated, but I've got rights that other people don't have. right? That's a massive problem for me.
But how many dictators are in the world then? Like, how many dictators now exist because of COVID?
Well, here's the better question: is why doesn't he just drop them, right? Why doesn't he follow what other people around the world are doing? What's the motive? What are we doing here? Is
but there's a lot of other countries that have certain restrictions in place for vaccinations. There's a lot of countries that won't let you in. One of the things about the convoy protest that bothered me was that despite the fact that Trudeau had the truckers, there was like actually, let me rephrase. The Biden administration said truckers can't come to our country if they're not vaccinated. Right around the time that the protests started to happen. But I never saw one sign that said, fuck Biden.
Well, I mean, if you want me to say it, I'll say it. Fuck Biden too. If you really want somebody to say it, I'll say it. I mean, right. He just did an emergency order begging for energy because his country's about to run out of energy. So
okay, but let's get back to it though, because what I'm saying to you is that there was.
Why did Trudeau become the focus? Well, I think.
Hold on. I just we'll deal with that in a second. I want to reconcile one thing first, though. The protesters, therefore, didn't seem very informed to me, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't take it very seriously. It's like they're fuck Trudeau signs, and I couldn't tell if half of them wanted to have sex with him or just didn't like him. But the idea that they were so uninformed that they didn't even realize that the mandate for truckers not being allowed to go in the United States was a Biden administration decision. Trudeau may have mirrored it, but it didn't matter. If Trudeau said, okay, you don't got to get vaccinated, the United States still wouldn't have let those truckers in.
Well, like I said, I think it morphed. It morphed from being, what was called an anti-vaccination movement. I don't really like to use the term anti-vaxxers, but I think it morphed from having these mandates into travel mandates into a broader protest against, lockdown measures and things like that, and all these things. And I mean, I question lockdown measures. I do, absolutely, because right now we're open, we're unmasked. Where is the spike, right? I mean, shouldn't we all be hospitalized by now?
But didn't we? Weren't we all playing a game where none of us really knew what was going to happen? It's fine to say lockdowns make me less free, take away my liberty and all that kind of stuff. But what if a bunch of unvaccinated people just died? Then you guys would have to sit there and go, oh, it looks like we were wrong about that. You didn't know that you were right at the time. You just thought you were. And if you're a leader of a government, are you deferring to cabinet? Are you deferring to health experts? Like, what would you do in that situation if a leader, what is a leader supposed to do? Let's put it that way. How do you follow a science that's fluid?
I think we had different countries to look to, though, right? So, it wasn't unique that people were dropping vaccine mandates and masking and opening up society. It's not like we were the first and we were trying to break ground and be the first to get out of this. So, we had data, right? Where's the data that supports masking on airplanes right now? I'm sorry. We were told all along when nobody was vaccinated at the peak of pandemic during Delta that air travel was perfectly safe. That was what our public health authorities told us, right? That transmission aboard aircraft is very, very low. So now all of a sudden, most of us are vaccinated and we have to wear masks and we're being told that the transmission risk is high. I'm sorry, that's bollocks, right? There's no science behind that. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that for a minute. I think that this is some sort of an extended punishment against the people who chose not to get vaccinated. And you know what? I made a different choice based on my own personal health, risk versus benefit assessment. But I just can't get on board with this, especially when it's looking increasingly like, it may be sort of punitive. I have to have, that's my sense, is that it's punitive at this point because these people embarrass
punitive might be
our government, right?
I think that governments are largely incompetent. And I think that what you saw was a government that didn't know what to do, almost like every other government on the planet. I think a lot of those mandates that were dropped in other countries were just like, Well, let's just see what happens. I don't think they knew what was going to happen if they dropped the mandates. David, you've been to countries that have actual dictators. Can you tell me the difference between Trudeau and those countries?
Well, as to both your points, I mean, I agree. Some of these mandates that are lingering are probably excessive, and I don't agree with them. However, as James points out, I mean, we didn't know what this was going to become, and you know, healthcare professionals still don't really understand what it's mutating into, quite possibly. So all governments at that point were kind of like, you know, hindsight's 2020. It's difficult. We do need to remove some of these mandates. Governments understand, by and large, now that masking doesn't have enough of an effect, probably in most everyday situations, to be effective. But what if because of the way this virus mutates, because of maybe something they expect to come again, they don't really have any effective uh, situations like masking or hand washing. It's a security blanket, in my opinion, at this point. That's all it is. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be careful. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't take reasonable precautions. But I think these mandates, such as that, I don't. I think the benefit has unless it's purely a psychological benefit for people to make them feel comfortable, I think its benefit is not completely fallen off, but waned significantly. And
Okay.
as to your point also about closing the borders, you're correct. It's here's the mandate. You can either take it and continue to earn a living, because if you don't, they're not going to let you in.
That's true for a lot of countries, by the way. You can't get into almost like a ton of countries unless you're vaccinated. And before COVID, you couldn't go to before COVID, you couldn't go to Kenya without getting a malaria shot.
I've been to Kenya, right? I've been throughout Africa. I know that they have mandatory vaccinations, but let's get real about what those vaccinations are. A lot of them are eradicating vaccines, in that you are basically guaranteed to be protected from these viruses if you get them.
But did you study the science of the malaria vaccine before you went?
This is a little bit, no, I didn't study the science of it, but I was fairly sure that if I got the vaccine, I wouldn't get malaria, right? Just like if I get a tetanus shot, I'm probably not going to get tetanus. Just like if I get a polio shot, I'm never going to get polio. So I think that's the problem, is that so many people have, is that, it's sort of like, we're asking you to take this, but we're not giving you any guarantees behind it, right?
We have that. It's called the flu shot. They do that for that too, right? The efficacy rate of the flu shot is usually between 20 and 40%, right?
But it's like, do you have a right to mandate something that's not an eradicating vaccine when you're not giving out those same sort of health guarantees? Is that a fair?
I don't know.
To try to sort of coerce people and force them into doing, because that's what you want them to do. So I think that's the issue with these, right? And you know what? We might get better vaccines. I heard that we might get a better vaccine in the fall. You know what? If we get a super Omicron vaccine in the fall that works really well, maybe I'll relook at getting booster. But like I said, am I going to get the same vaccine that they say only lasts for a couple of months and has limited efficacy? No, I'm not going to get it. Sorry.
But do you at least acknowledge that if there was no vaccine at all and we just dealt with COVID, that the death rate would have been a lot higher?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've never, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've always acknowledged that. And I've said before many times that I wish people wanted to get vaccinated, and I wish that they believed in it. And I feel like a lot of the reason that people ended up not believing in it was failure on part of public health and messaging and things like that. I feel like there was a huge failure, and that helped fuel people who didn't want vaccination. So it was always very clear that I felt that, especially in at-risk groups, there was a huge benefit. And studies still show that in hospitalizations and severe outcomes, people who have got at least 2 doses do better. That's in the data, right? But just because that's in the data doesn't mean that I'm going to say, hey, you know what? You should be stuck inside your country indefinitely, and you shouldn't get to fly across your country because, you know, you feel like you don't need a vaccine for something that you've got a very good chance of recovering from. Right. So I just, like, I don't deny those outcomes. Those are in the studies. Right. But I do question boosters.
David, let me go.
Just for a second, even the WHO put out a statement that I put out the other day saying,
"Oh, you trust the WHO?"
Yeah, well,
I don't even trust the WHO. And
I don't trust the WHO, but I'm saying even they put out a statement saying that boosters have to be tailored. They have to look at local responses. They have to look at risk versus benefit, and they have to look at what demographic, and that there's very, very limited data saying that in a young, healthy population, boosters are effective and warranted. That's the WHO, not me. So,
the interesting thing, though, about what you're saying, though, is that if in 5 years a new disease comes out, we are going to be in the precarious position again to make a vaccine on the fly. And I don't know if if we're ready for that. David, I want to just kind of go to you for a second, because I want to know from your perspective and from the operatives that you were mentioning before and the church and everything like that, how was COVID itself co-opted in order to steer and sort of manipulate the situation, if you happen to even feel that that's what happened? I feel like COVID was politicized by everybody, personally. I'm just wondering.
It definitely was. Absolutely. These brethren, for instance, they will not acknowledge COVID's existence. To them, it doesn't exist. It was a profit opportunity. So they imported their equipment, their wholesale crap from China, and right where the virus is from, of course. And then they sell it for profit here, but they're deniers. And by and large, you'll find that a lot of the religious fanaticism, those people who are politically active, who overwhelmingly happen to be identify as this conservative movement. And again, I take pains to say I don't believe it's the entire Conservative Party. I think it's been hijacked by these neocons, and truthfully, it's these people don't even believe in COVID. So naturally, their political beliefs. I don't know how they do the mental gymnastics, how they can profiteer off of it, and not believe, but. That's the mindset they're coming from. I do agree. I think it's excessive. I think it's overkill that the unvaccinated can't travel. I mean, it's. But then again, I don't have hold of certain data, and I'm by no means an expert. I mean, I wish these mandates would be dropped, but that's just me speaking as John Q. Public. I have no information that I could enlighten you with.
Okay, let's move on. I want to know, Andy, what is this?
Well, that's the great mystery of the day. So I put it out there because I was sent it. And so I had put out, and I put this out independently. I'm not associated with anybody. I'm not affiliated with anybody. I just said, I'm going to go pitch a tent on Parliament Hill in protest on Canada Day. I'm not, affiliated with any groups. There's no foreign funding or anything behind me. So
what if you want the big tent? You want a big tent, then you might have to reconsider.
People offered. They were like, "Let's get a GoFundMe going." I was like, "No funding, right? Absolutely not." And so I made this promise a year ago. Actually, I said if we're not all free in a year, I was going to go to Parliament Hill and protest and pitch a tent. And I actually think I said at the time that I would go wearing nothing but our Canadian flag. And that got a lot of attention. But that's not my plans anymore. So anyways, so I've been talking to...
Listen, your credibility might be impacted, Andy, if you don't go naked with a flag. I'm just throwing that out there.
Listen, you promised to go wearing nothing but the Canadian flag. So you go wearing nothing but the Canadian flag. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, so I've been talking to James Topp a little bit. He's the soldier who's marching across Canada. So he actually said that he has not agreed to this event. So it looks like my sort of idea of let's camp, and like I said, I'm not affiliated with anybody. There's no, politicians saying, will you do this, and try to take Trudeau down or anything. That was just me saying, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care if I do it alone. I don't care if I get a ticket. If you want to come. and join me. And I don't even want to call it a protest. I want to call it just a different celebration, because after I started saying this, of course, we know that the parliamentary precincts, the West Bloc, apparently they had to do construction all of a sudden on Canada Day weekend. And so Canada Day celebrations were moved to a different location. They're not at Parliament Hill this year for the first time in who knows how long. So everybody's like, you shut down Parliament Hill. So I was like, well, I'm going to go anyways, especially if they shut it down just to try to make me not come. Now I'm going to come, and I'm going to bring more people with me. So anyways, it looks like maybe some groups have maybe co-opted that movement, and they came up with their own camp days. So I don't know a lot about this right now. And like I said, I spoke to James Top, so he's a soldier. He also didn't agree to speak to that yet. He might agree in the future, but just to clarify that's not his, his sort of outfit. It's not what he's doing. And I mean, this is the sort of thing that we're talking about, is how somebody can take my words where I'm just like, I'm going to go, I'm going to pitch a tent, join me. And somebody can take that and sort of use that idea and then attach somebody's name to it. Furthermore, right? And, co-opt these movements. And like I said, and I told James, I just got off the phone with some of the people who are with him. I'm like, do not let any freedom group, even not myself, attach our names to your movement. It's your movement. It's your mission. You have the plan. You've done the work. You've been marching every day. So do not let any group use and manipulate your name and let your message be manipulated. Or before you know it, you know what? You'll get Chris Sky up speaking for you, right? This is what happens. This is what happens.
Also, maybe if you have the ear of the people that are going there that you believe have the correct passion and views, or whatever you want to call it, maybe stop with like the fuck Trudeau flags. Like, maybe their problem is themselves often. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's because I tell you, like I may have uttered the phrase fuck Harper before. I have certainly been like really critical of Justin Trudeau. I call him a cupcake. I think he's like a third-rate soap opera actor in every syllable he utters. I don't find him genuine. I think he's dishonest. I have a whole laundry list of things. I've never voted for him. I voted for, a Liberal MP who turned out to be I think he set a record in his first term for the most times that a government backbenching MP voted against his own government. It was like 34 times, and that's Nathaniel Erskine Smith. So that to me was a good vote. I just don't understand why I would ever take anyone seriously if they're draping a flag over their back that says fuck Trudeau. What is that?
I don't really like the fuck Trudeau signs. Like, it's nothing that I would ever fly. I have a huge problem with the people who do the swastika syringe signs. I hate those. I think it's extremely disrespectful to the Jewish community, to make that comparison, or to insinuate that. I find that super disrespectful. I find it but I mean, what? I'm not the thought police. I'm not the free speech police, right? If you want to fly a fuck Trudeau flag, I'm not going to tell you that you can't do it. I don't like it because here's why. I think it's detrimental to the purpose. I think it's more damaging.
And as soon as we can define the purpose, we'll be right on track.
No, I think whatever the cause, it doesn't matter what the cause is. It doesn't matter if you're there for you dropping mandates. It doesn't matter what the cause is. I think that when you put out that sort of messaging, like let's look at the Trudeau protest the other day. So there was the big protest, and I debunked that too. The one where he said that he wouldn't go, he wouldn't speak because there was anti-Asian racism. Okay, so
right, I saw that. Yeah, but the article didn't. Just to give people background, the article didn't actually, I think it was a CBC article, and they didn't actually give an example of what racism was there.
No, and that was the problem. And so I actually got a hold of 2 hours of footage protest, and I watched all of it. And I said I didn't see any of that. I saw bad things. I saw ugly things.
What kind of bad and ugly things did you see?
Well, I mean, yelling and screaming and swearing, just
like the way that Jagmeet Singh was treated when he was in Peterborough, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and like I said, and there was, of course, a guy with the news there, and I was the first person to point out there's somebody walking around with the news, and I think that that's extremely inappropriate. Again, am I the thought police? Am I the free speech police? No, I'm not, right? I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to be here to censor your message, but I will say that when you carry signs like that, I feel like it diminishes your message, and it detracts from it, and it's not beneficial in any way, right? So that's why I disagree with it. So, it's not my favorite thing to see. And like I said, even, like I said, these signs where, and even when they compare, I saw a lot of signs comparing Canada to communist countries. And I never like to do that because I feel like if you're in,
Hold on.
I mean, my children are Chinese, right? I can't even
Wait.
China.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. So bad communist country. No, I won't stand for that. But Trudeau's a dictator. So he's what, a fascist?
I don't know if I've ever actually called him a dictator. I think I said today that he has a problem with democracy, or he should give an honest democracy a try. I do feel like Trudeau has got, I think he's leaning towards increasing authoritarianism, and I don't like it. I think it's a bit of a democratic backsliding that we've seen in our country. I think that's hard to deny. And would it have happened under any other government? I don't know, right? Is it a symptom of the circumstances of the pandemic, or is it Trudeau, right?
I think it's a combination of both. I think there's a little bit of nanny state in him where he thinks he has to take care of us with Bill C-11 and the online stuff and everything. David, do you think that do you think the operation, if you want to call it that, of sort of steering the convoy and to utilize them as a voting pool at the end of the day in order to gain power, is that over, or are we going to see another iteration of that coming
Absolutely.
up between now and the
It's a moving target. Absolutely. You jump in. By nature, it's an opportunist business. You jump in when something gets a little traction. That's when you throw your muscle behind it. And you just mentioned that particular bill about the online content. Have you noticed where the Ontario and other provinces gambling is heading? It's not brick and mortar. It's online gaming. Online gaming, which is largely funded by Russian money, that is pouring in. And this is demonstrably true and provable by simply looking at all of the business of the province. Just pull it up, take a look.
Yeah. I don't know anything about that, but I will certainly look it up. A quick question, just because it popped in my head. Andy, you said the other day, maybe it was yesterday, I can't remember when it was, that you regretted donating to the convoy in a Twitter space thing. Why do you regret donating to the convoy?
Do I regret donating to it?
Didn't you say that in a Twitter space conversation recently?
I'm not sure if I said that I regret it. I think the problem is that what happened is, so I mean, I'm not like a seasoned journalist, right? I just started doing this. I started doing this out of nowhere, right? I don't have any training. I was sort of just motivated to start reporting and things like that, and did it on my own. So I think the problem with me, and I'm doing it again here when I'm saying I'm going to go camp out on Parliament Hill, is that I get too close and too involved in these causes, and I really let them touch me, and I get really emotional and really attached to them, and I root for them. And I like to think that, in the sense of the convoy, that I was rooting for the right thing, because I think that it was in Canada's best interest that went well, that it was peaceful, that it was a powerful demonstration, that it tried to accomplish its objectives. And I thought that was in the country's best interest and everybody's best interest. Nobody wanted to see violence. Nobody wanted to see it go badly. That would have been horrific. But I do tend to, sort of attach myself to these causes, and I get a little bit too close. I do it not just with this, I've got a really good talk with the Iranian community going on. I go down to Toronto, I march against the IRGC while I cover these things, right? Is it appropriate for me to be reporting and protesting? Probably not. No, it's not. You know what? Again, I'm doing this myself, though. Nobody's paying me, right? I'm not CBC. Nobody's funding me, so I'm like.
Yeah, but if you were familiar though, like, listen, I'm not mad at you for it or anything. Like, Now Magazine will go protest against the Israeli government while reporting it. I don't like it though because your objectivity comes into question.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
right?
That's fair, right? But I mean, to be fair, I did, I did report on bad things that happened in the convoy, right? I reported on the apparent homeless shelter assault. I said to donate to that shelter. I had people out cleaning out statues. I was taking pictures of them and saying, you know what, you guys are gonna go clean this up, right? Go get off that war memorial. I'm sorry, my family served. That's totally not appropriate. And it did happen. And I was, very, very vocal about not going after the journalists who were there. I just said, what we're seeing, this footage is horrific. I do see journalists being harassed and chased. It's totally detrimental to the cause. You're not scoring any points. Even at the Rolling Thunder protest, I came across the BBC and people noticed them and were going after them. And I just said, you know what? Don't. You're not winning. Yeah, don't do it.
I think one of the things I want to sort of talk about a little bit, and we're going to wrap in the next 7 minutes or so, but is I like what you're saying now. You're a little bit more snarky on Twitter than you are in real life, which I totally get. Most people are.
I'm actually a liberal. I'm a liberal. Okay, I'm a liberal trapped in a conservative body because I hate Justin Trudeau. It's terrible. Like I just feel
I don't know if you're a liberal. I don't even know what that is anymore.
Well, I used to be.
I want to know if you saw. I'm going to play something, and I want to know if you've seen it before, and I want to know what your thoughts are about it. Okay.
Hold on, let her. Can you let her leave? Can she leave?
No, she had her opportunity.
This is the Hamilton police arresting me for political dissent.
When you're under arrest, you
Can I please give him my phone, please?
This is the fascist that runs this country.
Can I give him my phone, please?
No, you cannot.
This is a reflection of what Doug Ford.
Can I give him my phone, please?
No, you cannot.
Can I give him my phone, please?
Yeah, you know what? I've had run-ins with her, and initially, my snarkiness, the snarky person in me, wanted to be because she was out there, and sort of, I would say that we probably had the opposite of objectives. Whereas I wanted to root for the best in the convoy, I felt that sometimes she wanted to root for the worst in the convoy. So we were a bit on opposite sides, and so, I wanted to be satisfied that happened, but I actually did make a comment on her later, and I said, you know what, you've got a lot of spunk, you're funny, you get out there, you're on the ground, and
she's non-combative.
I'm actually really
non-combative,
yeah. So I felt
That's
that
good.
and my initial response, because we're on political opposite sides, was to lash out at her and to be
I don't think she's the opposite of a liberal.
But I do, that was ugly. And you know what? It could be me in handcuffs next time, right? Let's face it. That's where we're at. So, I mean, this is what it's come to is, all of us sort of have this danger of being censored, being deplatformed, receiving backlash for what we're doing. It can hit any of us. So I mean,
David, I want to. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but just before we run out of time here, the media, David, you have been pretty outspoken, as I have, about the mainstream media being asleep at the switch intentionally. They don't want to touch the stories that we've been breaking, and Press Progress has been breaking, and others about some of the stuff that seems a little bit more scary. And then you see, and I know Karima wears a lot of hats. She's a lawyer. I would say she's an advocate. She's a journalist. As far as I'm concerned, the woman needs a cape because I find her to be super brave and inspiring and aspirational and all that stuff. But is the mainstream media Yeah, yeah, right. And has the mainstream media now painted itself into a corner where it is sort of like hoisted by its own petard in how they decided these are the issues we're going to cover, and we're not going to cover these issues. And if we cover those issues, we're going to frame it in the most negative way possible, and these issues we're going to frame in the most positive way possible. Can they get out of that now? How would that look? And do you think they're ever going to cover the stories that have come out of the Klondike Papers?
I think from the numbers that are being shared with me by people like yourself and other journalists, people are talking about this. It's getting out. And there are other ways to ensure that it gets out, all of it. And those steps have been taken. So they're getting out one way or the other. And I think they'll jump on it. Honestly, because I think the country needs it. I'm not a liberal again. I'm not a conservative. What I'm trying to say is that these aren't liberals or conservatives that we're really talking about. These are bad actors. These are people who are seditionists and had treasonous motivations. It's not a political thing. This is a criminal thing, and we need to root these people out so we can go back to actually having a conservative movement and a liberal movement. The bad actors need to be pulled out of the field, and I think that is taking place. I think we need to give mainstream some credit. There are facets of this story that they have pieces of that they're building out their stories with, so we do have to give them some real credit. And a lot of those journalists are probably sitting back and saying, "Hey, these people are doing it. They're nailing it out of the park, and they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, so we can come in and we can join into the story." I mean. Mainstream media is sort of like a big warship. It doesn't turn on a dime. It takes a little time. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to get there. And I think these people are going to be pulled out. And I think then maybe we can go back to being a country, one country, not divided right down the middle.
I would agree with that. Andy, do you have any last words that you want to say just before we go? Any
No.
clarifications? Can you tell me why I can't stop looking at your knees because they're sticking out of your jeans.
Yeah, my knees.
Well, they're never mind.
That's a very strange fetish, my friend.
They're just knees. I didn't say anything bad, did I? I don't know. You're my first guest to put her knees up, and now I'm just all confused, right? So now, do you have anything to say, Andy?
Yeah, that was a very loaded line there.
Okay, I'll turn it back to you. Your hair looks fabulous. It looks amazing.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. So, like I said, I'm thinking that I called Ottawa Police today. I tried to be upfront with them about what was going on. Like I said, I don't know exactly what's showing up to Ottawa Canada Day. I know that I'll be there. I know that there's going to be a lot of people there. I know that James Top is going to be rolling in. So, and we're already seeing the same sort of media suppression. I mean, this guy just walked across Canada. He walked across Canada in February in -20 weather across the prairies. Right?
For what? For what though? What was his man? What was it? Because let me tell you something. I don't care if you guys go and protest. Hold on a second. I like peaceful protests. 1 second. I like peaceful protests. I don't care if you guys protest. But the last protest, whatever you want to call that, had no message that anybody that wasn't there could really understand. It was a salad bar of why do I hate Justin Trudeau? And if you said anything from mandates to socks, you're welcome aboard. It was an anti-Trudeau protest. That's all it was. And that's fine if you want to do that. What is this protest going to be about?
So this is James Top. So James Top is a warrant officer, and he was let go because he didn't have vaccinations. So you can go on his website. He's got a very clear letter. He's actually got a successful meeting planned with several members of parliament to talk about how we move forward and how we sort of get out of this, never-ending, rolling, constant restrictions, right? And how we sort of don't allow our freedoms to be taken away again. So anyways, it's all out there. So, we're seeing the same thing, is that it's sort of like, if we don't cover this, it's not going to happen. Well, it's going to happen. So I talked to Ottawa Police today. I just warned them. I was like, he's coming. I'm coming. There's a lot of people coming, apparently. So what's the game plan? So, I guess that's next step forward is, I'll be in Ottawa. Maybe we can touch base while I'm in Ottawa on Canada Day, and we can find out what's going
Let's
on.
do shrooms. Do you want to do shrooms together? Because I would do that. I would go to Ottawa to do shrooms.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not really my
Okay.
thing. It would be,
It will be. We'll
it would
have a
be-
great old time,
it
Andy.
would be something new to me. I like to try to stay. Is that legal? Is it legal?
Yes, as long as there's no follow-up questions, then yes, the shrooms are legal.
I would. I usually try to stay into like within legal behavior, although I seem to be towing the line as to what that is nowadays. So,
We'll go to the reserve. We'll grab an ounce of shrooms, and we'll split them in two, and we'll have a good time. How's that?
okay, well, yeah. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't know about that. I'd be much more down for having a beer and having a dance on Parliament Hill, and
Shrooms it is.
I mean, live life, right? Go outside the box, I guess.
All right. I'll be on shrooms. But listen, it was nice having you, David. We're gonna talk tonight, probably on the phone, so we won't make it an emotional goodbye. But thank you both for coming. I hope you'll come back. This was pretty painless, right? I didn't insult you too much. Sorry about the knees. I didn't realize that knees were a gratuitous topic to talk about. I wasn't trying to be all But you're fucking blushing over your knees. God damn it! When did knees become breasts? They're just knees. All right, guys. It was still fun. I had a good time.
It was good. No, I was a little bit worried when you were like, "I'm going to bring on somebody else." I was like, "Oh my god, is this like a trap? Is it a pile-on? What's going to happen?"
Well, listen. In full disclosure, Andy, I was going to bring on Ryan Lindley until I found out that you guys basically declared war on each other, and I was like, I don't know. Yeah, see, you don't even remember the people that you have wars with.
I
You're on
don't.
Twitter. That's what it is. When you go on Twitter, it's like Andy Lee on bath salts, and then when you're off Twitter, you're just a lovely Andy Lee. I think that's what's happened.
Who is he? What did I do to him? Is he okay?
I don't know. Maybe you guys should talk. Ryan, Andy, maybe you guys can, fight after the show. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, maybe we should come on and we can hash it out one time.
I'd invite him on right this second if he would do it, but he's probably not going to do it. He could come in right now if he wanted to. Let's give it 10 seconds, see if he comes, and if he doesn't, and then we'll just... Ashley, is Ryan going to come on? Ashley's in the comments. She can just say yes or no.
I actually don't remember.
No, it doesn't look like it. It really doesn't look like it.
I do have a tendency to set somebody in my crosshairs, and if I find something on them, I can be a real sniper, right? That's what I'm known for. But I'm actually used to be like a totally normal person.
I can still see your right knee. Can you do something about that, please? No, the other. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Maybe Brian saw my knees and thought he'd forgive me.
I'm recently separated. Maybe I saw knees and just got a little like, oh my gosh, stop it. That's distracting. I have to do a job here, Andy.
Well, there'll be a lot more knees on Canada Day. So you know what? If you're watching this, you want to come out, come on out, right? Like I said, I'm going to be there.
Means. I can't. I gotta go because there's too many bad jokes in my head. Okay, Andy Lee, thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you online, I'm sure. And thank you very much for coming. And David, as always, thank you very much. I'll probably give you a call in about a half an hour and we can go over some stuff. And thank you for joining us. I think that went pretty well. I disagreed with a bunch of stuff that was said, and I didn't find her disagreeable. Yeah, it's one of those things. I find just to put a bow on what we were talking about. If you find yourself a convoy protester who's enamored by Pierre Poilievre, then the political operation was a success. That's just my opinion. You can agree or disagree. Either way, that's that. So tomorrow night we have Tom Doyle, who was the right-hand man of who I consider the greatest Canadian heavyweight boxer of all time, George Chuvalo, as well as Mitch Chuvalo, who is George's only surviving son. He's had so much tragedy in that family. 3 kids, either 2 OD'd, 1 committed suicide, and his wife committed suicide. So 4 people in his immediate family have died of either overdoses or suicides. But he's going to come and talk to us about the life and career and the family life of George Chuvalo. So that's tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And then on Monday, I have Simon Rakoff, who's a great Canadian comedian. And I have an announcement, guys. Do you guys remember the We Run Shit documentary that we did? I think it was like a week and a half ago. Adam Scorgie has agreed to come on Blackballed next week, either Thursday or Friday, and we are going to do his weed documentary, which name escapes me right now, but we're going to do it in the same format where we're going to play the film. We're going to stop it at certain points. Adam's going to tell us the backstory of that scene. It's a documentary about weed. It should be fun. Let's all get high. Let's all watch Adam Scorchi's documentary. So that's all coming up next week on Blackballed. Once again, thank you everyone for joining me, and we will see you tomorrow.
Blackballed. 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 Blackballed.